It's Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2016. I am Robin Yellow, and this is Techtasm episode 19, E3 Redemption. And with me again, because nobody is as gorgeous, is James Woodall.
It is true. I don't understand it myself. I just live with it, and it's fine.
I was hoping that would have thrown you, because it's such a ridiculous thing to say.
I don't know what do you mean? What's ridiculous?
Nothing. It's just the truth. It's an unassailable fact.
Massive fact.
Well, dear, excuse me, dear listener. This week we're going to be looking at WWDC, E3, and a possible Red Dead Redemption 2. And we're going to be judging these stories and others to determine if they are Techtasms, which by our definition is a blend of tech for technology and tasm for phantasm, something that exists only in a person's mind. So without further ado, let's get on with the first story. James, is there any other story this week than WWDC 2016, the Apple Developer Conference in California?
I presume you watched it yesterday evening.
Do you know I didn't? I did the Google one, and it was your turn.
Was it? Okay.
Thank goodness it's a natural interest of yours. Let's start off with watchOS 3. What's new with watchOS 3, James? I don't think I even saw watchOS 2, so I'm not going to be a lot of help here.
Well, the main difference between just 1 and 2 was 2 allowed you, certainly developers, to create native applications, which was is a big deal, because the old way of doing it was the app ran on the phone and the watch was like a second screen, so things were a bit slow. So watchOS 2, native applications. Now, supposedly, with watchOS 3, they've made opening apps much faster. And I will say, as a watch user, opening apps is a little bit of a poor experience. So,
is that because the apps are going to be cached in memory?
They didn't really go too much into how or why that is. I mean, you got to remember, with the keynote, there's so much to cram in. They don't really talk detail.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that they're going to do some more intelligent memory caching, which will speed up that launch process. May impact battery life. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's pretty good. I mean, they've announced a couple of new watch faces. There's some new activities. There's a new app called Breathe, which will help you with your fitness to work out how to breathe better and so forth. Hey, look,
work out how to breathe better.
Well, you're right. You make fun, which look. It sounds like you are doing, and what I'll say is just calm down, love. What? Okay.
Calm down, love.
However,
yes,
I think it's really cool.
Okay, so is this sort of like yogic breathing, or is it like panting, or?
I think it's just about calming yourself down and learning how to, that kind of stuff.
One thing caught my eye was this new SOS feature that lets you quickly dial the emergency number in your country, and it simultaneously sends a message to your emergency contacts notifying them that you need help. And I think it even sends a map of your location at the time that the whatever emergency occurred.
Yeah, and that's really, really interesting. I'd like to know when in an emergency you remember how to use that feature.
Well, I think you press the crown and hold it for a number of seconds, don't you? So, I mean, it's quite a simple gesture.
I don't know what that would do at the moment on the phone, on my watch in OS 2. Hey, who knows? I think
though, you try it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah.
Shame we're not on video, isn't it? We are, though. We are on YouTube, of course.
Yes.
With an array of salty photos for you to enjoy while we talk.
Those photos that never change.
Well, it wasn't just, of course, the watch that got upgraded. tvOS got an upgrade. And the Siri functionality has been enhanced, apparently, so you can do things like search YouTube for cat videos.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's necessarily as big a breaking feature as possibly the watchOS 3. The interesting thing about the tvOS is the first thing they announce is Sling TV is now coming to Apple TV. Now, aren't they an external company? I mean, yes,
and they're going to be streaming premium content through the Apple TV, without Apple TV getting a piece of those content deals.
So and that's fine, but I would have, if tvOS was going to be getting a decent update, you would have thought they would have mentioned that first. So the fact that the Siri functionality is what comes second. Oh, hey, look, it's great that Siri's improving, and that's obviously a core area for Apple to improve. But I think the tvOS enhancements, I'm just a bit like, oh, okay, that's great, but it's not going to really shake my world.
Well, James, OS X is dead.
Yes, Mac OS. The revival, in fact, because, of course, as we spoke pre-show, it was previously called Mac OS. Then it disappeared for 14 years. Yeah, Mac Space OS. Then 14 years it disappeared, but it's come back from the grave. I really like some of these features. There's some really interesting ones, like if you're wearing your watch, your Apple Watch, and you open the screen on your laptop, it will unlock automatically because you're wearing the watch. That's quite cool. I like that. That's quite nifty. A few other interesting features. A shared clipboard between your iPad and your Mac. So if you copy something, a photo, text, or whatever on one device, you can paste it on the other.
Oh, that's quite good.
That's really, really useful. I think that's just fantastic.
Well, of course, they've got the desktop operating system to mirror. Google, of course, have got Chrome OS, and Microsoft don't really have a mobile OS as such, but have got the desktop as well. So actually, Apple are almost uniquely placed, I think, to have functionality like that as a differentiator.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really useful. What they're also doing, interestingly enough, is with video applications. Say, take video within websites, YouTube, Vimeo, that kind of thing. You can extract any video player and make it picture-in-picture as a floating window on top of your PC screen. And the demo is actually really useful because there are plenty of times where, if I'm coding away, which for our listeners' benefit happens all the time, when I'm coding away,
continually.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I'm doing it now. If I was coding away, you can then take out a YouTube video of lolcats or something really important like that, and it can always sit on top of the window. Because I think the one thing missing from YouTube in a web browser is always on top. I think that's really annoying.
Yes, which is a feature actually is missing from most OSs and environments. You can't even. I think you can do it on the Samsung phone, and I think it will be available in the new release of Android.
Yeah, but it's in an iPad actually on a video. If you're in a video app, you can minimize the video app, and it will keep the video on top. But if you're in a desktop PC, it's just not really a feature of, say, web browsers, like the ability to keep it on top, which is weird because, interestingly enough, Windows does support for any window to be always on top. The developer just has to enable it.
Now, James, I know you're a big fan of Siri. What's happening to Siri? Is that spread out across?
Yeah, it's finally made it to. I was about to say OS X then, Mac OS. It's finally made.
It's on tvOS, isn't it? Oh, so it's on Mac OS as well.
Yeah, it's now come to Mac OS, and there's now a. I guess it's now across all the platforms, which is great because it's on the watch, it's on the phone, it's on the TV, and now it's on the Mac. And just moving ahead to the iPhone version, they've announced that there's a Siri SDK now, a development kit for Siri. So developers can integrate their applications into Siri. So you can order an Uber from Siri, which you couldn't do before. I believe they're adding the same SDK to the Mac version. So now developers can customize Siri across all the platforms, which is brilliant. That is, I have to say, the big thing for WWDC this year was all about developer extensions. It's not about apps living in sandboxes, it's about how apps can interact with other apps. And that's always been a thing that Apple have always missed out on. They're very good at getting the app sandbox right, but if an app wants to talk to another app, hey, go to a different platform.
Well, talking of apps, let's have a quick roundup of what's changed with iOS 10, see if any of these grab you. The new lock screen?
That's interesting. I have to say, what's really frustrating about the lock screen for me is if your alarm goes off in the morning and you've got notifications, you miss them because you have to unlock your phone. So there are certain things on the notifications that hopefully they can fix on that. It's just nice that they're basically allowing you to view more details in your notifications on the home screen or the lock screen than you would have done previously.
And just to enhance a little bit your Uber story about Siri, it looks that Siri can now have some sort of conversation. The example here given on Boy Genius Report, thank you very much for the coverage, BGR, is that you can say, send a WhatsApp to my wife, that'll be 5 minutes late, done, order me an Uber X,
Well, this
done.
is the SDK feature. This is the idea that a developer can enhance Siri with their own speech domain, which is whereas before Siri was purely in the Apple world, set a timer, open my email, that kind of thing. Whereas now a developer can hook into Siri to say, order me an Uber.
Like, for example, which calendar app do you use on your phone?
I use the Apple one because it synchronizes with Exchange. So I guess that's what I do.
Well, I imagine a lot of people are probably using the Google one. And of course, up until now, or until iOS 10, no integration with that because you had to, as you say, live within the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. If you weren't using Exchange like we are, you were either an iCloud, which, yes, I'm sure the Google one is interesting.
Now, what about the new Photos app? What's it talks? They made a big thing about their advanced deep learning techniques.
So deep learning is something that goes across actually in the keyboard as well. The keyboard on the Photos, the idea that the phone is learning and predicting what you want to do based on what has happened. So just quickly going into, say, the keyboard's quick type suggestions will be based on your conversation. So, like for example, if somebody sends you a message, "Where are you?" it will give you a suggestion to send them your location.
What I thought was quite interesting here, it does a lot of this sort of facial recognition and grouping your friends and all this kind of stuff. But it's done locally on the device. So it's not actually sent to the cloud for analysis like Google does.
That's really key for privacy. Apple are very big because what they've stated is they make money through what their current business model is. They don't want to betray the users by mining their data. So they've done a lot of work to make sure that all the data that's processed and mined is completely anonymous, and if they can, they will do it locally on the device. So the facial recognition to work out if your grandparents are in the same photo on different vacations is 100% done on the device. And that, I think, is the big differentiator between Apple and Google on the software side. Apple don't need to make money from the operating system because they make enough from the apps and also from the hardware itself, of course. So
now, one of the big apps on on iOS that we all had a good laugh about is Apple Maps. And one of the features that it never had was the ability to route you around the traffic in multiple ways, like Google Maps.
Yes,
have they done anything about that?
They finally added that in. And interestingly, going back to the SDK, developers can now extend the Maps application. So, for example, Uber can now integrate directly into the native Maps application as opposed to being a separate app. So nice. It's a big developer release. This is fantastic for developers.
Now, the big pile of steaming poo that, in terms of interface, has been Apple Music and iTunes.
Yeah, it's
impenetrable. Have they done anything there?
Well, they've completely overhauled the user interface, which I'm guessing there's a bit of egg on face there because it only came out a year ago. So they've completely changed the Apple Music. And I do say, as a regular user of Apple Music, it's not the easiest thing to navigate. And in fact, what's really awkward is on the current version, if you discover a track and you play it and you move on to something else, you've got a hard time to find out what you listened to the song previously. It's a little bit awkward. So they've now added things like a list of songs you were listening to. How crazy is that?
How crazy is that? Anything on the News app?
Yeah, the News app. I don't really use the News app, but what they've said is they've now got 650 million monthly readers. That's incredible.
That is incredible. Absolutely unbelievable. I know that. So, for example, I use the built-in News app on Android, and it's very good. But most Android users I know don't use it, don't even know it's there.
I think that's the same thing with the Apple one. I say that. I don't know anyone who does it, but then is it really something you talk about? But what's really nice about the News app is they now try and predict stories you're interested in. So when Eddie Q was showing off Eddie Q being the VP of Apple's services and so forth, when he was showing off the News app, it said that it's created a category called Formula One because it's guessed that he might be interested in that. I think that's quite interesting. It's a nice way of discovering stories and topics that you're interested in. So
yes, it'd be nice to have it a bit more flexible. Certainly, the News apps that I've used, you have to pick your interests, and then it makes suggestions of things you might be interested in. But it's nowhere as near as sophisticated as something like Google Plus that has that kind of reactive, responsive technology. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's nobody in Google Plus. But okay, that sounds interesting. Now, Messages is something is an app I know you've used. Did they add anything else in there?
Yeah, Messages is really interesting. It's a combination between SMS and iMessages. So if you're sending an SMS to somebody who uses an iPhone, it will switch to iMessage mode, whereas if they're not, it will switch to SMS mode. So I like the fact that they kind of blend the two together, because most people are not going to have a clue, right? If you're talking to somebody who's got an iPhone, you can now do a lot more with it. So you can send messages with emotions. So you can have a message that might, bang on the screen because you want to make a big shout out, or it can gently animate in because you want to softly say something. That's really fantastic that they've done that. You can also send things like annotated pictures and animations and so forth. And what they've added on the emoticon side, or the emoji as they call it, is they'll make emoji suggestions based on what you've typed.
Like Skype.
Like Skype? Really? Does Skype do that?
Yeah, well, yeah, it does it for me. It's sort of, as you're typing things in, if there's an appropriate emoji, it kind of pops up above. But it's not terribly good. So
okay,
maybe they've done a better job of it.
Well, what they do is they'll highlight words in yellow on the message screen.
Yeah.
And then you
and you can convert them with a tap.
Absolutely. Which I think
very good. So
the example they showed is, congratulations on your graduation, and graduation became a little thing that you tapped and as they pointed out, no one's going to find the graduation emoji. Who's going to look around for that, right? So they did that, but some really interesting effects, like you can send messages that reveal if you swipe over them. And it's just lots of personal touches and features that I think that they're really adding. But the downside to it, of course, is it only works if the people you're talking to have iPhones. Yes,
that's the problem. Any messaging app which isn't cross-platform is doomed to be, a niche product. But this thing has survived for so long. I don't understand it, and it is used by Appleistas such as yourselves for chatting with other Appleistas. But we've had this conversation before on Techtasm. Having multiple messaging apps is not a problem. We are not brand loyal when it comes to messaging apps. So actually, we don't need one app to rule them all, and it's perfectly okay to have messages for your mum and your
But the difference with this one, though, let's remember, is it is also the SMS app. So I don't think that people who use messages are necessarily aware that it does something different for iOS users than it does for SMS.
Well, a lot of people like to have those lines blurred, don't they, as well, because they've got SMS in their package and they don't care that it costs you money. Yeah. I do not respond to SMS messages, James, as they cost me money, so I won't do it. So let's summarize.
Well,
overall, good show. You sound very enthusiastic about it.
It was good. I'm disappointed. If you think back to the conversation we had with Tom a couple of weeks ago about the Mac Pro, it would have been nice to see some new hardware. Okay, especially the Mac Pro, because the developers, I don't think the Mac desktop line is particularly good, and it would have been nice for them to address that. However, as a software release, and especially aimed at developers, which let's not forget, WWDC is a developer show, perfect, spot on, 10 out of 10.
Well, that's 15 minutes of hot content, dear listener.
Yes.
We watched it so you didn't have to. I think the whole Apple ecosystem is a Techtasm and ultimately will fail. Only kidding, I'll edit that out.
Okay, good. Well, Lenovo. Okay. It was reported in Wired by David Pierce that finally Lenovo is doing something with Project Tango. Now, Robin,
finally, anyone is doing something
exactly.
with Project Tango.
For our listener, what is Project Tango?
It is a 3D sensing kit that you slap on the back of your smartphone, which allows apps, Android apps, to perceive the world in 3D with very small, low-power sensors. But having said that, this phone's a whopper, isn't it, James?
I mean, they're saying isn't it bigger than a iPhone 6S or something?
It's a 6.4-inch whopper. It's got an enormous battery. Obviously, the 3D sensors themselves, it's got multiple cameras on the back. It's got an IR camera and an optical sensor and some very clever software that can be quite energy intensive to actually do feature detection and provide a real-time 3D view of what you're looking at. Now, one of the apps that Johnny Lee, who we know from Project Tango, showed was a fabulous... and I don't know if you saw this, James, this domino app.
No, Domino?
So he had the phone in front of him in kind of view mode, holding it about 30 centimeters in front of his eyes. And he was looking at a sort of tabletop that the device had sensed was a tabletop. And then he was running this app called Dominoes where he dropped dominoes and other things in a sort of curvy line and split it into a V, and then tilts the first domino down, and it does that sort of domino fall thing that was popular 20 years ago or whatever. But of course, because it's all being sensed in 3D, he could move the viewpoint around and see the dominoes all from different angles because it was continually sensing that flat surface, very much the way HoloLens does it. I'm
just reading that Ashton Kutcher is a Lenovo exec. I mean, what's going on there?
Is that exec, or is he an evangelist?
Is that a bit like when Alicia Keys was like head of branding at BlackBerry or something?
BlackBerry, yes. And well, what they do is they sign these stars up for a period of a couple of years, and they pay them a lot of money to endorse their products. In the case of Ashton Kutcher, though, he's very active in the investment market.
Yes.
And it could be that he had shares in Google, or he had shares in Motorola, or there was some kind of deal to be done. But he is quite well known within the tech and investment community. So
yeah, he's just a bit weird.
Yeah. What this phone is good for, I honestly have no idea.
But what's interesting about the article, though, is they claim that it's not good. It's not the last of these devices. Lenovo are committing to them, and in fact, it says further down in the second or third paragraph. Lenovo hopes that this will be a long line of Tango phones. I don't get it. I don't understand.
I'm not sure I do 100%, but I suppose until somebody, well, as Lenovo have, released a proper product that can use these features, the development community will never get behind it. There was a developer device created by by Google before, so that as a sort of development mule for developers to do it. But really, with no opportunity to deploy these apps out into the public, having a vendor now that's produced a phone that's supported will hopefully kickstart whatever Tango's going to become. But it's a real product, and it's out there, and people have to buy it now. If they don't buy it, then they'll close it down, and we'll never see it again.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm thinking, and there's a word that's creeping to mind here, I think it's Techtasm.
I think I'm going to agree with you there, James. I'm reluctantly agreeing with you, but it's only because perhaps you and I lack the imagination to see what Tango could be beyond a neat little dominoes game.
Yeah.
But talking of neat little things, Mashable this week reported about Xbox Project Scorpio, which promises an Xbox One with 4K gaming and virtual reality play. Now, apparently, this thing has got 6 teraflops of graphics processing and an 8-core processor. Now, this was all announced, James, at the E3 conference in Los Angeles, the big gaming shindig, which is weirdly in the same week as WWDC. What do you make of this Project Scorpio?
I think Project Scorpio was once known internally as Project Let's Make Sure We Don't Lose Out to Sony again.
Yes. Well, traditionally, of course, Microsoft have always gone before Sony at E3.
They absolutely have. But in terms of the console wars, I don't think Microsoft have ever... Actually, didn't the PS3 and the Xbox, they were quite evenly matched, weren't they? But certainly the PS2 massively outsold the other guys, and the PS4 is currently outselling certainly the Xbox, I think 2-1 at the moment. What's really interesting about this is for the last couple of months, Sony have been rumoured to be doing Project Neo, which is their Xbox 4.5 or PlayStation 4.5 or PlayStation 4K. Microsoft unveiled Project Scorpio without unveiling Project Scorpio. They didn't actually say anything other than its name and that it'll be really, really fast. In terms of a release date, it's not coming out till the end of next year. So is this just a way that they can just kind of beat Sony to the punch? Because what they said further down in one of the articles that I read, that I think it was in my favourite website, that they wanted to give consumers the choice to know what's coming around the corner so they can better spend their money, which I guess is code for Sony might release the PlayStation 4K or 4.5 or whatever they call it earlier, but just hold on a second because Scorpio will be better.
Yeah, well, you see, that's it. Sony released or teased the information about the Neo over the last couple of weeks, and Microsoft had to respond this week. Now, in a way, Sony were baiting them, I think, to do something, to say something. But you've got to remember, James, this is just words. None of this stuff it just doesn't have to be real. This is made up. They've got 18 months to get this right.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I'm certain they were working on it. They definitely were. They probably weren't ready to talk about it, and they probably felt that they had to. I mean, interestingly enough, this kind of did take away from an interesting announcement from Microsoft, which was they did actually unveil a new Xbox. The Xbox Slim, the Xbox One S, which was in fact announced and is going to be available in the next coming months. There's no difference in terms of specs. It's just smaller, cheaper, faster, lighter, whatever.
I know it was more expensive, wasn't it? I think the regular Xbox One is cheaper, $50 cheaper, and the One S is for the people who've got $100 to throw away.
But so I think maybe they kind of did that one a bit of a disservice by saying, here's what you could have won, or here's what's coming around.
Well, look, to summarize this, and let me ask you to call the Techtasm on rather than the actual Scorpio itself, on generally the idea of having a mid-run, the idea of a console lasting, 5 to 9 years. But actually, in this case, after just 3 years, coming out with upgrades which provide more performance, particularly, the possibility of having external graphics cards, that sort of thing, to allow you to upgrade your reference platform gaming console in the same way that you might upgrade a gaming PC, for example, with a new graphics card when it comes out.
What do you think about this? Instead of the whole 5 to 10 year market that they were going to have, what they've said is the mid upgrade will run all Xbox One games, and all Xbox One games will be able to run Xbox Scorpio games. However, what if there's another console further out that then makes the Xbox One obsolete, and effectively they're always managing two at the same time that run the same games? How do you feel about that?
Well, I just think it's an acceptance of the fact that these days, in 2016, companies are better and faster at industrial design, making machines and supporting multiple SKUs than they were at the turn of the century when they designed a reference platform for gaming, a console which had to run 7 years to make the economic case. So I think actually this is the new future that we're living in. I think part of this also is a response to VR, the need for VR to have 4K support. Think about it. You need 2 high-def images, one in each eye. That's double your processing power. So, they had to do something anyway because, the Sony PlayStation VR is not going to be great. And the reports are that the gameplay is good, but you're still suffering from that resolution problem. You can see the pixels.
But what do you think about the whole concept of a partner? Because they didn't talk about that. They specifically said that they're open to the idea of partnering with people on the VR front. And the rumors are that they're actually working with Oculus in the background. So, I mean, what do you think? What do you think to that? The idea that Microsoft are really moving in a direction where they're not doing everything now.
Well, they have no skin in the VR game at the moment. They have HoloLens.
The HoloLens operating system.
Yeah, but that's mixed reality, so you can actually see the world around you. They don't have immersive VR, which obviously both Oculus and HTC have bet, and Samsung to a lesser extent have bet that immersive virtual reality is the way to go for entertainment. And of course, Microsoft they're not playing in that market. So I wouldn't be surprised if an Xbox One Turbo, whatever, could support the Oculus headset and hand controllers.
Yeah, well...
As well as a PC, because fundamentally it is a PC on the inside. It's Intel architecture, isn't it?
And with 18 months to go, they've got time to get it right. I mean, they can change partners in that time by doing that. It won't affect the release. It's very interesting. The console market is certainly hotting up. I mean, I have to say the PS3 2 years ago was getting pretty old. It came out, what was it, mid-2005, the PS3? So it did very well to last as long as it did.
Yeah, but then Grand Theft Auto 5 came out on it. It was beautiful.
Yeah, sure.
It showed what was possible.
Play it on the PS4, and it's a completely different game.
It is, and when when we're 5-6 years into the PS4, some game studio will come up with the most awesome, brilliant, wonderful game with fabulous physics and awesome visuals. But I think it just takes the game development market time to actually get up to speed with this stuff. Talking of the game developer market, the Express gave a fantastic summary of all the E3 information and rumors. And let me run a couple of these past you, see what you think. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare.
Yes.
Okay. PlayStation VR arriving in North America on October the 13th with Final Fantasy 15, Batman Arkham VR, and Star Wars Battlefront X-Wing VR mission.
I played the Arkham Knight Batman, and that was quite an exciting game. I don't know. I think as we've discussed, PlayStation VR is going to be a little bit hit and miss. So hey, let's just see what happens there.
Resident Evil 7 giving an E3 reveal during the PlayStation E3 event, including a release date.
Well, that's good. It's a popular franchise. I mean, Sony are really hitting the exclusives hard this year. So hey, that's
January 24th, 2017.
Yeah, well.
The new... I don't even know what that is. I'm not even going to talk about it. The rumored Spider-Man game from Marvel and Insomniac teaming up to create a brand new, authentic Spider-Man story exclusively for PS4.
They do like their exclusives. I mean, I have to say, the one thing that Microsoft don't have is they don't have a lot of decent exclusives. Sony seem to really, really get that nailed. It's
God of War?
God of War. I've not. You see, you're the PlayStation guy. I mean, I've got one, but
I've never played God of War, so I really don't know. Zero Dawn. Detroit Become Human. Have you seen that one? That is fascinating.
Detroit.
The one I want to get to, I want to hear about Red Dead Redemption 2.
I started the first one. It was good. I didn't finish it. I don't know why I didn't finish it. Maybe I should have done.
Well, to me, Red Dead Redemption 2, which of course came from the same studio
as GTA.
That did GTA, which is Rockstar. And when I played Red Dead, it had that, not uniquely, but at the time it was quite a rarity to have a completely open world where the actual storylines were triggered by your physical or by your virtual location within that gigantic...
How is that different to GTA? Am I missing something?
It's not different to GTA, but it was on horses with rifles in the Wild West. So it was very similar. I don't know whether it was the same engine or not, but it had the same kind of feel about it.
It will be. Rockstar have got a great engine, the Rage engine.
That's a proprietary engine. They don't share that with anyone else.
I don't think they do. But do you know the first game that came out in the Rage engine? No. It was table tennis.
Fantastic.
They wanted. So I watched some terrible BBC documentary,
Oh yeah, it was a drama with Harry Potter in it.
With the Harry Potter chap,
Daniel Radcliffe.
And they went through, and it was all very. Whatever. It was all.
Well, it is. I think provides GTA 5 provides the best merging of gameplay and photorealism, or certainly believable. They do the weather textures so well. Yeah. When you compare it to, another open world game like Fallout 4. You can really see the quality of the GTA 5 engine, the Rage engine. Love the name, Rage.
Yeah, the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine. There you go. That's
indeed, Rockstar. Now, okay, E3 so far. It hasn't finished yet. Yeah. Still going on.
Okay.
E3, was it E3 Redemption or E3 Disaster?
It's really interesting. My favourite game, actually second favourite game, Hitman. Shout out Agent 47, because I'm sure he's listening. There was a couple of extra things announced for that, some special episodes, bonus episodes. They're going to revisit. They're revisiting Sapienza and Marrakesh with different stories. I think that's going to be quite interesting. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, nice advert there for Jay.
There we go. But yeah, look, exciting times. Both Microsoft and Sony doing different things. Sony focusing heavily on the software, even though they could have talked about hardware because they teased an EO, they didn't. Microsoft talking about a console that probably doesn't even exist at all, and maybe a slightly more expensive one of the one they've got at the moment. So, hey.
It is what it is.
Yeah. So, the final story. Do you use LinkedIn?
I do. I think everybody uses it, don't they?
Well, more people are going to be aware of it now because Microsoft yesterday announced that they bought LinkedIn for, and I hope you're sitting down, $26.2 billion.
2.6 decacorns.
Yes, exactly. Mega Money Incorporated. Matt Rosoff in Business Insider UK shared a letter that CEO Satya Nadella sent to all the Microsoft employees about this. It was a really interesting, strange day to have the announcement on the same day they were doing the E3. I mean, they could have waited a few days or done it earlier or whatever. Really strange. But Microsoft, they are a different company. Maybe they're just trying to recover from the absolute failure that was Nokia. But wow, LinkedIn.
This knocks Nokia, if you'll excuse the alliteration, into a cocked hat in terms of its size. But I think it can go one of two ways, James. I think it could go the way of Facebook's acquisition of Instagram. They leave the brand exactly as it is, and it attracts its own audience, does its own thing, produces its own monetization and cash, but gets to take advantage, of course, of Facebook's infrastructure. Or they could slap Office 365 LinkedIn across the top, or Dynamics 365 across the top, or Yammer LinkedIn Edition 365 across the top, and turn it into some kind of, Microsoft co-branded disaster, which I think would be to lose the essence of it.
Think about Skype, though. They've done a really good job of keeping Skype.
Yeah, but have they really?
What do you mean, have they really? Yes.
Okay.
Well, okay. In what way have they not done it well with Skype?
Well, so Skype has taken from something which had a unique way of connecting, which was peer-to-peer, and was adopted by large numbers of people because of its unique architecture and the way, these super nodes and no one company owned the infrastructure that powered it. And they took it and completely ripped out the back end and put Microsoft Azure and their Microsoft network on the back end, meaning that any communication through it could be passed willy-nilly to any local law enforcement service.
Use Skype because of that. I mean, I talked to my mum using Skype. I can't say, and if she's listening, I hope I don't offend your mum, that she's even aware that it was running on some kind of peer-to-peer, super encrypted, distributed way. I mean, people don't know that kind of thing. Not everybody is like us, sadly. No,
I do get that, and I certainly understand that Skype in itself is a disambiguated voice service, particularly good at being completely separate from cellular carriers or telcos for carrying voice. So I do respect that, and of course it runs on every platform. You've got to admire that, even Windows Mobile. Yeah. The only one. So I do respect that. And of course, Skype and Skype for Business particularly is doing very well amongst enterprises. So I'm not saying they haven't taken it and made a good business out of it. But what I am saying is that they haven't left Skype to do its own thing. They've taken the Skype brand and developed their own voice services, or developed Skype's roadmap probably as a Microsoft, proper Microsoft division. Crack it open, it's got Microsoft written through it. And I don't know what would happen to LinkedIn if they did the same thing, because people are on LinkedIn because that's all LinkedIn does. And I think LinkedIn as a division of Microsoft, if it were to be co-branded in that way, might be trouble. It's just an opinion. Yeah, what can I tell you?
LinkedIn has an interesting CRM. It's kind of a light CRM, hasn't it? It's interesting from the sales point of view. I have bad experience with Dynamics. I think it's clunky and does too many things. Certainly the Dynamics CRM, I think, is pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's not great. That was acquired, of course, by Microsoft.
I think pretty much everything Microsoft or any large company does was an acquisition at some point in its previous life. I mean, take Android, for example, or yes, Siri on Apple, or, Maps from Apple, and, oh Christ, the list could go on.
I think he's misjudged this one. Really? I think this yeah, I do. There's something about me which makes me a little bit uneasy. I think they've got a very slim opportunity to not cock it up, which is to leave it going on its own. and to just literally move the infrastructure onto Azure, and that's the synergy, and leave it at that. And leave all the
You
same
never know; it
people.
might already be running on Azure.
Well, yeah, it could be. That's true. Yeah, it could be. But I think the larger possibility is that this is a Techtasm, and at 2.6 decacorns, that is too much money.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Okay. No, I don't know. I think this is real. I'm reeling it up.
And on that divided note, that's the final story.
Wow.
Well, that is it for this week. You can find us at facebook.com/Techtasm, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, FeedBurner, but bizarrely not on Spotify. I don't know what's going on there. I'll have to take a look at that. And you can also contact us at feedback@techtasm.com. We record every Tuesday at 2100 BST GMT, which is the time at which you will be getting this week's episode. Well done, dear listener. And this is me, Sir Robin Yellow.
And me, Mr. James Woodall.
Asking the question, is it real or is it just a Techtasm?